All right, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to another webinar with Honeycomb Consulting Skills Training. My name's Derry, founder and managing director at Honeycomb. I'm delighted today to be joined by Richard Longstreet. Hi, Richard. How you doing?
Hi, Derry.
I'll ask Richard to introduce himself in a second. The topic for today is Tarka Talent, Richard's recruitment firm that he founded and runs. It's a 2026 consulting salary and benefits report, which is of super high relevance to anyone running a consulting team or working in consulting. So if that's you watching here today, then thank you for joining us. Just to do a quick technical check, if someone wouldn't mind dropping a comment wherever you're watching, whether you're in StreamYard or LinkedIn or on YouTube or on X, we're going live on all those different platforms. If someone wouldn't mind just dropping a comment to let me know that you can see and hear me, that would be appreciated. And we're going to dive into the report. I'm going to ask Richard to introduce himself in a sec. And while he does that, I'm going to drop a link to the report, or where you can download the report. I'm going to show it up on the screen here, and I'm going to just drop it into the comments as well, so that if you haven't read this yet, if you haven't got your copy of it, you are able to go and grab that. And with that up on screen and you get in the context here, Richard, do you want to just explain a bit about why you're here, about Tarka Talent and the report?
Yeah, of course. So hi, everyone. I'm Richard Longstreet. I'm the founder of Tarka Talent. We are a recruitment consultancy for the consulting market, and I often describe us as consulting specialists and consulting generalists. So while we solely focus on the management consulting market, we have we recruit across quite a breadth of consulting skills. We do strategy, transformation, delivery, change, analysis, data, kind of a full breadth there. My background is I used to work as a management consultant. I started my career at Capgemini Consulting 13, 14 years ago. Did that for a few years before leaving to set up a consulting recruitment practice for another business. I ran that for 5 years and then split away from there to launch Tarka Talent 5.5 years ago now. We're currently a team of 10. We operate across the UK, the US. We've done some work across Europe and the Middle East before as well. And most of the work that we do is in smaller and mid-sized consulting firms. We tend not to work with the much larger firms, but we would rather partner with smaller, mid-sized, growing organizations, and becoming a trusted talent partner for them over the years, really.
Awesome. And one of the reasons that we know each other is because you've hired people into a bunch of our clients in recent years as well, and they all speak very positively about their experiences with Tarka. And you produced the Consulting Salary and Benefits Report. 2026 edition is just out now. Before we dive into the detail of that, it'd be great just to hear a bit about the history of the report, how long it's been running for, how you put it together.
Sure. So when I launched Tarka, I've always had the ambition for us to be much more than, I guess, a traditional recruitment firm, like much more than the CV factory that I think recruitment firms have the reputation for being. And we collect a huge amount of data as an organization anyway, through conversations with candidates, with clients over the course of a year. So every year we've released an annual salary report. In its early years, that was much more of a pure benchmarking kind of tool. And then in the last few years, we've looked to try and build it out a bit further. And we've included, for the last 2-3 years now, we've run a survey alongside our own analysis of the data we collect. Last year, we ran the survey between September and December. We had around 500 consultants complete that survey. And the questions we were asking in the survey, it's obviously there is salary data in there as well, but we are also looking at the benefits that people provide, what pensions they're receiving. We're asking questions around holiday allowances, flexible working policies, parental leave policies, and we're asking around market sentiment. So were organizations hiring to budget last year? What are their ambitions for the year to come in terms of what levels they may be hiring, what type of roles they may be hiring? And all of that we feed into the report. And then the core salary data we take from conversations that we have with candidates over the course of that year, which is about 3,000 data points, I think, for that, to feed into the report.
So this really is a incredibly rich source of information, whether you're or sitting there thinking about hiring and retaining consultants in your team, what the whole employee value proposition needs to be, but particularly all the building blocks of the compensation package.
100%. Yeah. I mean, we're asking questions around, if you're looking for a new role, what are the motivations for you looking for a new role? What's going to be important for you in a new business? So we get quite a lot of insight from that, as well as, I guess, the core fundamentals of a salary and benefits report.
Yeah. And the reality is there aren't many specialist recruitment firms that are focused on the boutique consulting market. So these data are not easy to find. So there's a richness there that's quite unique. So I know that having looked at the people that registered for the session today, I know that a lot of you are in people positions at boutique firms. Definitely go and check out the report. And you have the opportunity in this session, towards the end of this session, to ask some questions. Apologies, my camera appears to have frozen. Hopefully that'll come back on in a sec. I am still here. At the end of the session, you've got an opportunity to ask some questions, or actually, if you want to just fire questions in the comments as we go through, then Richard and I can pick them up as we go. He will answer from his expertise, and I'll throw in some curveballs based on what I know as well.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. So, with that said, please do drop questions in, and we'll get to them. But Richard, it'd be great just to kind of get the headlines of, like, what are the key things that you found in this year's report in particular?
Okay, so there are quite a few different elements that I guess we could dive into. If we focus on the core salary element of it first, so we're feeding off data largely from 2025. So the salary brackets themselves last year didn't shift materially. So a manager in X or Y business, that salary bracket probably stayed in the 70 to 90 grand or whatever it might have been. And the brackets themselves didn't really shift. They haven't really since 22, 23. There hasn't been a huge amount of movement. There was in that post-COVID boom period, not so much since then. But inflationary pay rises or year-on-year pay rises were higher last year than what they had been the year before. It was around 6% from the data that we've got from that. Bonuses last year were higher than they had been the year before, both in terms of the percentage of people who received a bonus, but also the percentages that were paid as a bonus. One of the really interesting insights I think that we took is that consultants in smaller firms, so we broke this down as 200 heads or fewer, they said that they felt more fairly rewarded for their work than consultants in larger businesses. And large businesses here is 10,000 plus heads. So we asked 1 to 5, do you feel fairly rewarded for the work you do? In the 10,000 plus, I think it was a 2.4 score, and it was 3.2 in the smaller businesses. So I found that quite interesting.
And is that with the essentially the same level of compensation?
Yes.
So they're
so really interesting. I mean,
but they feel like it's fairer in the smaller.
Yeah, the difference between in kind of the core salary brackets between in the transformation world between a big four and a boutique transformation firm, like, for the most part, salaries are relatively aligned. Like we break our salaries down in the report from minimum, maximum, and average from the candidates that we've spoken to. The averages are within 5% of each other. I think at all grades, like, there's very little difference actually between the boutique and the larger firms in many instances. But it's the consultants feeling more fairly rewarded for their work in the smaller firm. I mean, that could be they feel like they've got better ownership of the work that they're doing, so maybe they've got more oversight of it, and they feel fairly rewarded because of that. Maybe it's a less hierarchical structure, so they're not seeing these mythical partners in corner offices earning £800,000 or whatever it was, the average Deloitte partner salary last year. Like, they are working much closer with the partners in these smaller firms, so they feel more a part of that team, maybe. Yeah, I mean, there could be tons of different reasons for it, but it definitely reflects, I think, that a lot of people enjoy working in these smaller firms more than maybe in the larger ones.
It's super interesting. When I go back to my Bain days, so for those who don't know, I started my consulting career at Bain & Company and spent 6 years there. About 20 years ago I started there, so don't benchmark the data here particularly. It's a bit out of date, but a couple of things were really interesting. So one was the Bain's structure, and this is common in a lot of firms that I work with now, is that the salary is pegged to the role. So your salary progresses by getting promoted, and you have a meritocratic promotion system. So there's not inflation-linked salary increases. And I think it was the post-MBA salary at Bain & Company was fixed at about 70K for 10 years straight. It didn't change. And it only re-rated when they realized actually this is becoming a major hiring and retention problem. So I think that's kind of static salary.
It's definitely works. So I left Capgemini in 2016 to start recruiting back into consultancies. And I think between 2016 and 2021, the salary brackets in consulting barely moved. So a manager at Accenture was £70,000, for example, for all of that time period. And then in that COVID period where we described it at the time as a bit of a war for talent, and like all the firms were throwing around sign-on bonuses, they were increasing their salary brackets. And I think a manager at Accenture is now like, well, you can get near 80K plus car allowance and those type of things. Because they moved and then moved again and then moved again. And all the other firms kind of moved to try and keep up with it as well. But then since then, so early 2023, it hasn't moved again. Like the salary bracket for a manager is the same as what the salary manager for a bracket, the salary bracket, for a manager was back then as well. So yeah, there's not frequently is there real movement in, I guess, the core bracket. But this is broader kind of consulting market context. 23 and 24 weren't fantastic years for consultancies. 25, it definitely started to pick up in the second half of the year. This year, it feels like it's picking up and carrying on. So in those slightly more depressed years, there were backlogs of people waiting for promotions. There were obviously redundancies made in a lot of the larger firms as well. Kind of all of that was driving, I guess, slightly upward pressure, or there were definitely groups waiting at the top of each of the salary bands in the different businesses, which I think breaks the commercial model ever so slightly, particularly in larger firms.
Yeah, it becomes a problem, I think, culturally in a lot of firms as well, if they start to say to people, oh, we actually can't afford to promote you.
Exactly. Yeah. So one of the things that we ask in the report is, like, if you're looking for a new role, what are the drivers for you looking for a new role? And what are you looking for in a new business? And every year we've done the survey, the top three are increased pay, improved career development, and a better working culture. And like the percentages of those like fluctuate slightly, but it is always those three things. So like the I guess the broad message from that is, if you can create a positive working environment where people can progress their careers quickly and they feel that they can earn well, and you're providing them with interesting work, great, you're going to retain the majority of your staff. And like, I mean, it sounds really simple to present it that way, but often simple is easier.
And those types of decisions, actually, for those running a firm, like they get very fundamental, because it drives. And there's a piece of work I did with a boutique, essentially trying to decide how fast we should grow.
Right.
And it sounds like that's maybe not particularly connected to the employee value proposition, like how fast you grow. Like, oh, you grow faster, you create more opportunity. But the balancing act was that if you grow at about 10 to 15% a year broadly, and I think this is still fairly true today, you're growing fast enough to create enough opportunities to be able to allow people to progress at whatever rate is possible. If you say, well, we've got to a nice size now, we're a 100-person firm, we know each other, we don't want to get bigger than that. The problem is you can't stay at that size, because you don't create the opportunities, and then people get frustrated. So you have to grow. So then the question is, how fast do you grow? And if you get beyond 10 to 15% a year on a sustained basis, say you aim for 30, 40% a year as a mature firm, you've got to be very careful that you're not trashing the lifestyle needs of people.
Yeah, absolutely.
That you're not pouring so much heat into it to try and drive that growth quickly. So
it's also about making decisions that align well to the growth ambitions that you've got. Because I mean, if you're looking to grow 15, 20, 25% kind of year on year, and you want your staff to develop within that, if you're only running one annual promotion process, everyone's going to get frustrated. They don't feel like they're progressing fast enough. Whereas there are now a number of consultancies who will run a quarterly promotion process, and that probably suits better to an organization that's got high growth ambitions, because you can move your people through the business faster. they can take on greater positions of responsibility. They feel more, I guess they feel like the chances of progressing are better as well, so they're more likely to stay. And if they are progressing, they're obviously going to stay more as well.
100%. I want to pick up on something you said a minute ago about how you're seeing kind of hiring picking up at the moment.
Yes.
And this is a really interesting topic, and I've written a bit about this, because there's this overriding narrative in the consulting market at the moment that like AI is killing consulting, which I think we all know is nonsense.
You
can't go through a generational technology change that every business needs help with and say, oh, that's bad for consulting. But for consulting firms themselves, the ones that are adopting AI, the prevailing narrative is, oh, they don't need juniors anymore. And there's all headlines of big firms not hiring. And I think a lot of those firms are dressing up the AI influence of that versus other factors, because it's easy to say, oh, we're investing and innovating, not just we lost a bunch of contracts or we're struggling to compete. But what you just said was hiring's picking up. So let's dive into that a little bit. Like, what's the dynamic and pattern in that hiring? What sorts of firms are hiring? What levels?
So in the report we asked, or in the survey, sorry, we asked if you're intending to hire next year, what levels are you intending to hire at? And we had asked that the year before as well. Entry-level hiring in the 24-25 version of the report was like 22-24%, I think it was, who said they were going to hire at entry level, whereas this year's report, it was up at 42%. So real marked increase in entry level hire intention. Not dissimilar at director level, like I think it went from 10% to 22% or something like that. Like bookending the seniorities, if you like, increased demand there. But the bulk of demand is the senior consultant to senior manager. Interestingly, across the board at all levels, there was an increase from when we ran the survey last year. But the two bookends, so kind of entry and director, were the two most significant jumps. So I'm currently working on a bit of a research project around what is the future model of consulting, what's the future talent model, what are the future roles in AI-empowered consultancy, if you like. Interviewing consulting founders and buyers of consulting services and investors and that type of thing. And the overarching message I'm getting back around like where businesses are hiring is they want the experienced practitioners, they want that senior consultant, senior manager, they want the safe pair of hands that they can put on a client engagement. Someone who is probably could work in the detail enough and is probably kind of interested in adopting AI, and they're working on things in the background there, but also like they are the senior face that you can put in front of and they can own a relationship. But the junior hires, you still need people to build, let's say, the different skills you're going to use in Claude, like people who are going to do a lot of that grunt work. If you think a lot of, so I'm stealing this from one of the interviews I did earlier this week, but if you split consulting into graft and craft, like a lot of the graft element of consulting, which used to be kind of your in-depth Excel work, your PowerPoint like slide creation, your kind of designing process maps and all that type of stuff. Like a lot of that graft element is getting made easier, and the outputs can be made quicker with AI, but you still need people to drive all the inputs, and you still need these people to come into the organization to make that work happen faster and better and smoother. You're not likely to get directors and partners doing all of that in AI themselves, like on Claude or whatever tools themselves. Like they still want that layer, if you like, beneath who's doing all of that. And it's in changing how that graft element is done, you can actually focus more on the craft of consulting, and bringing the juniors up through the business. Like if tools are going to make them or enable them to do the work a lot easier for the graft element, they can focus more on the craft of consulting, and it can almost turn them into better consultants and almost take consulting back to, I guess, what it was or what everyone thinks consulting should be, of really understanding client issues, really getting into the details, building fantastic relationships with clients, and doing some genuine problem solving. Like it can almost take it back to that, as long as the judgment is there and how the AI tools are being used to facilitate the graft element of consulting. I think they can. I think they can do all of that. They could do all of that equipped by way faster cycle times in terms of like the information they're getting access to, the insights they're getting access to.
So like, if you think about the kind of overall journey of consulting back in the day, if you wanted to find something out, like you had to go to the library, or
Yes.
you had to
Yeah.
phone a bunch of people. Bain famously did a beer market sizing project in Africa by going bar to bar and counting the bottle caps in the bins. That type of research was what was necessary back then. And then we've moved to a place where the research is faster, but people are still making outputs and generating outputs themselves and thinking quite deeply about those outputs. Now we can generate outputs very quickly. We've run within Honeycomb, we're in the process of migrating to run entirely on Claude.
Mm-hmm.
And we're running into a phrase we use. I don't know if it's internal or more commonly used, but Claude and done. Right. And the idea is that, like, you just chuck it into Claude and then you get the output. And the reality is, and the line that we're holding internally is, there is no such thing as Claude and done. Mm-hmm. Because everything that gets produced has to have human eyes, human insight, the whole last mile oversight on it.
Yeah.
And what we're starting to see with firms that are adopting AI is not that they need fewer juniors. The juniors they have can cycle things faster and produce more value, but they're also, the productivity gains aren't as extreme as you think, because you have to get them to slow down a bit. You have to get them to stop and think and do the synthesis. And they're still responsible for delivering a product to a manager or a partner that is of a high enough quality.
Yes.
And if they don't do that, if they just Claude and done it and chuck it over and expect the partners and the directors to be the ones that provide the thinking, then they're not going to last very long.
Yeah.
But that's
always a massive part of there's a large part of the questions that we're asking in this research project are around, what are your expectations of your consultants' use of AI, the skills, the AI skills that they have. And one of the things we're hearing back most is it's all about the judgment of when to use AI and critically analyzing what the AI is providing you. Like, you can't just Claude and done it. You have to think about the problem in the first instance, still use your problem solving skills, and then use Claude to actually facilitate the analysis that's going to inform the solution you're trying to create. And look, it's fantastic for getting 75-80% of the way there on slide creation or whatever else, and maybe you need to jump in and tidy it up afterwards. It's great for a lot of that type of work, but it comes back to, like, have you got the consulting fundamentals?
Yeah, 100%. Are you seeing any trends where firms are starting to think about compensation packages differently, where they're trying to attract more technical talent, more AI-enabled talent?
Like a little, yeah. I mean, as I said, because we are consulting generalists, like we have a real breadth of different consulting skills that we cover. So for a larger consultancy, I think we've made 6 AI product manager placements recently, like where they are actively looking for people who are coming from either from other consultancies where they've been working on enterprise AI solutions, or they are coming from more of a tech or data or whatever kind of background themselves to come in and design these products and tools to work at an enterprise level. So we're doing that type of thing in one space, but equally I work with strategy consultancies. There's a lot more focus on how they would leverage AI to create reports faster, kind of structure data better, or kind of a range of different bits there. The really interesting question that we're asking people in this research project is, how are you assessing for AI skills?
Yeah.
And there is no real answer to this. Like, there's a couple of firms where they've almost said, right, okay, here is a problem that we are facing. You've got 3 hours, for example. Like, here's a laptop with Claude license. Like, build us a timesheet solution, like for a smaller growing consultancy. So we've had that in one instance. We've had another, look, X or Y business. This is how things currently operate. Where or how might AI be able to do a lot of this easier? And it's kind of really taking it almost in a practical case study kind of environment. But a lot of the responses I've got are, it's just a competency-based interview, and it's right. I want to understand your curiosity around AI. I want you to demonstrate to me that you've spent some time to actually learn about large language models, learn about kind of how AI is relevant, learn about MCP servers. Learn about all of this, and so that you can relay it back to me. I want to show that you've got the curiosity of thinking about how this can work.
Yeah, more concerned about the curiosity than the actual skills now, because it's going to change so much.
Yeah, and I mean, they're saying, look, it probably is a bit of a red flag if they're saying, oh, look, I haven't really used it. I can understand how that's a bit of a red flag for most consultancies now.
Yeah, definitely. We're about halfway through our session now. We're going to pivot a little. We are already starting to pivot a little bit into what actions can be taken off the back of what you've found in the report. And I think there's two groups there. So there's the actions for the people leading firms, and there's the actions for consultants working in firms as well, and how those two different groups should think about it. I think we'll take the first one first. One of the things that we've noticed, not related to salary, but related to this AI skills thing, one of the things that we've started doing in our training, for example, is where we've got clients who are moving on with AI adoption, and not all are. There's a reasonable subset where we say, oh, what's your policy around AI usage? And they look as though they've never heard of AI, remarkably. But others who are full steam ahead, the ones where they're full steam ahead, we're redesigning our training so that a lot of the practical exercises in the training cannot be done unless you make good use of AI. There's just too much time pressure loaded on. And then we see some teams just implode because they're trying to do it manually, and others that are AI competent. And I'm interested in this idea that this new profile that's coming in, starting to impact compensation potentially in different firms, assessing people in different ways. Like that's a clear kind of action that some firms are taking for these current dynamics. But in terms of like the insights from the salary report and the dynamics that you're starting to see, like what are the actions that firms are taking, or in your view should be taking in response to those?
Specifically around the challenge of AI skills and people coming with AI skills, and that possibly being at a slightly different price point to most consultancies.
Well, yeah, that and more broadly as well. Yeah, just interested to know what should people be thinking about as actions to take given the trends that you're seeing.
So there's a few different bits. So one of the interviews I've done was with a partner in a Big Four, and she was talking me through the AI training that they have rolled out particularly for leadership. Super tailored to each different partner or director. I think they went down to senior manager for it. It's super tailored to them and their specific practice and area, and all the way through the training it was very task-based. So you had to come out of each stage, you had to have created something using AI that kind of passed the set a bar. And her expertise is education, higher education, kind of tech-enabled transformation in that space, and she had built this tool that would review a legacy IT landscape and kind of identify where there might be opportunities for improvement from it. And that, like, if that's what the Big Four are doing, does that mean that smaller firms need to compete in the same kind of way? Probably not yet, not necessarily, but you probably need to be aware that that's what they're doing. I mean, there's all the knock-on impacts around what that might mean from a pricing standpoint, commercial standpoint, how consulting projects are priced, etc. The separate conversation. Other elements from the report and what consulting founders, leaders, heads of people, heads of talent, etc. could do. So, I mean, first and foremost, benchmark your salaries against the report, see kind of how your salaries compare. But I would say you have to do that with a bit of an open mind that a manager in one business is not the same as a manager in another firm. So you can't just do it by titles. You need to kind of dive into the responsibilities or years of experience or whatever kind of metric you might want to look at to try and judge whether you are paying your team fairly. Particularly in smaller and mid-sized firms, it doesn't always stack up neatly that a manager at Deloitte is the same as a manager in X or Y boutique. So that's one element that I think is really important. The other, coming back to
that one, like you've been working on a bit of a matrix to kind of
give
insight around that, haven't you?
Yeah, exactly. So I mean, 5 years ago, I think it was, I created the first iteration, if you like, of this matrix, where we mapped out 15 consultancies in the London market and mapped out what each title was meant from a years of experience standpoint. So started as a graduate, if you progress through the business from analyst to consultant, senior consultant to manager, what does that pathway timeline look like? And how is that different across different businesses? And we were working with quite a large consultancy at the time who they were struggling a bit with their offer acceptance rate, particularly manager and senior manager. I think it was around 2/3 acceptance rate. They knew that they paid well for their titles, so they were like, we don't understand why our acceptance rate is quite so low. So we used the first iteration of this matrix to effectively say, well, but a manager in your business is more senior than a manager in almost all these other firms. So actually, where you're looking to bring someone in as a manager, they're probably a senior manager in another business, so you're offering them a drop in title. That's really difficult for most people to stomach, even if you are offering them a 10% salary increase. So actually, there needs to be a little bit of a realignment and readjustment there to if you're looking to attract this type of profile, which they were. So like we worked through that with them. We're now building a version of the matrix where you can click into each of the different job titles across these 15 different consultancies, and we will expand it out to other firms as well. And it will be able to show you the responsibilities in each of those titles. So what is a manager at PwC versus a manager at Deloitte versus a manager at Capgemini and Venn, from a responsibility standpoint? Like a manager at PwC, are you leading small projects, multiple work streams on a large project, that type of thing, versus a manager maybe at Capgemini where you're a program lead and you've got multiple PMs beneath you? Be able to do that comparison through the tool. So we're building that out at the moment, but I think it should become a really, really useful tool for that comparison. And then we're also going to build one for the strategy market, MBB versus your OC&C or Oliver Wyman, your LEKs, etc., to see what differences come from there too.
Super interesting. You reminded me about a conversation I was in the start of this year where someone was saying that their focus area was public sector and health in particular. So one of their kind of recruitment pools was the NHS. And it's quite a common dynamic for a lot of our public sector clients that they're trying to hire out of the organizations that they consult to, and then the reason that we work with them is they want to then turn those people into consultants.
Consultants, yeah.
But in this particular case, like hiring kind of mid-level, trying to get people into manager, senior manager type grades, and they were saying that they're struggling because they can't pay as much as people are getting paid in the NHS.
Interesting.
For those roles. Yeah. So that salary benchmarking, like you can waste an awful lot of time trying to hire people. I had a client back in the day, this has always stuck with me, where he was hiring software engineers, and he was adamant that the market for software engineers was dramatically overpriced because the people he was trying to hire, Google were hiring and paying them 3 times as much as he was offering. And I had to give him a bit of a reality check. That doesn't mean the market's overpriced. That means you're underpriced.
That means you're underpriced.
Market. Yeah. But that benchmarking piece seems super critical. And I think is there still a dynamic that you see where a lot of boutiques really want to hire out of the bigger firms, particularly out of the big 4, because they get that stamp of quality. They know people have had good training.
There's definitely an element of that. Yeah. I mean, there's also a slightly separate conversation we could have around the caliber of consultant now versus 10 years ago. Like a fair few clients are talking to us around managers now are not operating the way that what they anticipated a manager operating as 10 years ago. So is there kind of a slight quality shift over like people who were brought up during the COVID period or in the post-COVID period where they weren't getting the FaceTime? Like, interesting separate conversation to have. But yes, there is still a demand for consultants who have been trained in the larger organizations and have gone through, like it is obviously fantastic consulting training in those firms. What is different now, I think, so when I started recruiting into consultancies, there was a massive demand for 3 to 5 years of experience from Big 4 and Accenture. Like you got promoted off the graduate program, you're starting to understand how to operate as a consultant, and that's where the boutiques would look to try and lift you across. That has now shifted to being much more in like the 5 to 9 years experience. So much more in that kind of top end senior consultant to senior manager type of hire. It's that experienced practitioner, it's that safe pair of hands, it's someone who can own and work directly with clients. Like you can trust them to do that. But equally, they will roll up their sleeves, they get stuck in, they're still hands-on, they're not at the level where they expect a team to deliver beneath them. That's now where we're seeing much more demand than in that 3 to 5 year mark, which historically that's where the demand was coming out of the Big 4.
Interesting. Okay. So if you take someone who's trying to hire that 5 to 9 year experienced person, like what if you're a boutique who like absolutely nails your compensation package to attract someone like that, like what is the package like structurally? What does it look like? Are there any kind of things that some firms miss and other firms get right?
From a financial package standpoint, not so much. Like if you're nailing your base salary and bonus element to it, that's all. Like that's great. The things that were I in a boutique, I would be stressing as a real pro for why someone should join would be the career development opportunities, would be the working culture. I'm a massive advocate of using your client case studies in your recruitment marketing. Like there is a misconception in the larger consultancies that if you move to a boutique, you're not going to be operating with FTSE 100 clients. You're not going to be doing like the same caliber of working with the same caliber of client, I should say. So case studies just dispel that myth completely. I guess the challenge for a lot of boutiques, if you are looking to try and pull out from the larger consultancies, is the consultants in those firms, they're in a bit of a bubble. Like I felt it when I was at Capgemini. Like loads of people we speak to who are in the Big Four, they've been there for 6-8 years. They have no idea who the other consultancies are out there. Yeah. And there are some fantastic boutiques who are on amazing growth journeys. And having done this now for 11 years, like I'm like, oh, have you heard of X or Y firm? And they're like, oh, no, I don't know them. Tell me about them. Yeah. Like, how do you not know about this business? But if you're in one of the large firms, like you are in a bit of a bubble and you don't necessarily know who the other businesses are out there. So there is a real recruitment marketing element that I think smaller firms could try to get right, but doing myself out of a role without having to go to a recruiter who's going to go and headhunt for them in the way that we would. They could do a lot more of their own kind of recruitment brand building, I think.
Yeah, to be able to talk about like, this isn't just a lifestyle move. Like you're not just moving to a small firm because you're feeling a bit burnt out and you want work-life balance. Like actually you can do some really super interesting work. You can progress.
You maybe be more specialist in X, Y, or if you want, you could be more generalist than where you are. Kind of there are huge differentiators in all of in most boutiques. But they don't necessarily shout about them.
I mean, I've been running a business that sells to boutique consulting firms for 8 years now, and I still hear about firms I haven't heard of on an almost weekly basis.
New ones every single day where one of my team will say, oh, have you heard of X or Y? No. I pride myself on knowing the market well.
Yeah. It's quite remarkable, really. So if you're a candidate sitting there and you're thinking, I want to change for whatever reason, and a high proportion of the people that you surveyed
it's 74%, but that's I know I've said this to you before. I think we take that with a chunk of salt because it's people who are obviously they've got some form of a relationship with Tarka already, so a lot of them are active candidates or would be. But I think 54% of our respondents from 10,000 plus people consultancies, so Big Four, Accenture, 54% of them said that they're looking for a new role. And that is some of our, I want to say probably a third of our placements come out of those organizations. So like there is an active candidate market in those firms, definitely.
Yeah. And so those candidates, like when you think about the kind of the insights from the salary report, from a candidate perspective who is thinking about a move, or potentially is just thinking, I'm not that satisfied where I am right now, and we know that's more in the big firms than it is in the small firms, but there's still a bunch of people that don't feel they're fairly compensated in the small firms. Like, what kind of actions would you talk about for the candidates to be thinking about, whether it's staying put or trying to shift?
So it's an interesting one because the grass isn't always greener. Like particularly for a lot of consultants, there are tons and tons of examples of people who have maybe done, let's say they've done 4 or 5 years in consulting, and they're starting to get a little frustrated with consulting, and they think a move to another consultancy will change all of that, and they might feel reinvigorated. And in some instances, 100%, they're in the wrong business. If they go to a different consultancy, that is exactly what was right for them. Equally, though, there is a significant chunk of people who go to another consultancy, do it for 12, 18 months and go, actually, the issue for me is consulting. My frustrations with the consulting industry is not with the consultancy per se. So like a move to industry then is a great option. And more and more industry clients now are hiring consultants. They're building internal consulting capabilities, and there are tons of different options there as well.
Yeah, you can operate like a consultant with the wrapper of a more corporate existence.
Yes.
If that's what you like. It's quite a beautiful thing, really. I mean, over my career, I've moved from working with very, very big organizations deliberately to working with smaller organizations, and finding that easier and more fun, and like you get access to senior decision makers and things.
Mm-hmm.
I've got friends like ex consultant or like ex Bain friends of mine, for example, who are now working as independents or running their own firms, and they love being in the thick of the politics of a big corporation and the challenge of navigating all of that. And I personally hate it.
Yeah.
And there's horses for courses, and there's lots of opportunity for different people.
It is exactly that. Consulting is a fantastic career because it creates tons of opportunities. Like the skill sets you develop in the first 3-5 years as a consultant are super transferable to other areas, and it does create a host of opportunities for people. Obviously, our sweet spot is moving people into other consultancies. We do a little bit of work direct to industry now because some of our consulting relationships, if they move to industry, they brought us with them. But our sweet spot is still that consulting space. But the skill set is super transferable.
Yeah, 100%. So I'm going to start looking forward a little bit now. Yes. But just for those of you watching us have this conversation, if you do want us to answer any of your questions, drop them in the comments, let us know, and we'll pick them up, or you can get in touch with us afterwards as well. But yeah, when you kind of look forwards to, I guess, the 2027 salary report and beyond that, like, what are you anticipating? Any like major changes in the way that consultants are compensated? We're seeing a lot of firms now having to change their pricing models and move more to outcomes-based pricing. Is that going to flow through into the way that?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. You may know better than me in terms of how these firms are pricing their outcome, are calculating the outcome-based pricing that they are proposing to clients. I would assume that is factored off current salary kind of brackets, current salary trends, and the makeup of the organization. Whether it is they've still got a pyramid structure, a diamond structure, a X structure. I've heard a couple of times now, or increasingly we're seeing more like column shaped or like thinner diamond or thinner pyramid. Yeah. I assume they're calculating that off their current model and kind of current salaries. The consulting talent market is definitely more competitive now than it was this time last year, which again was more competitive than the year before. So they're good consultants are getting snapped up pretty quickly. And the last time this happened was in that 2020 to 2022 boom period. And that did result in a real shift in salary brackets. I don't see this resulting in a major shift in brackets. Like there's definitely increased demand in data and AI type consulting, and due diligence consulting. We're seeing increased demand heavily at the moment. But do I think that those core salary brackets are going to shift? Not really. Maybe by a few percent, but I don't think it's going to be a fundamental salary shift in the year ahead. I do wonder, though, from that, the different commercial models of the consultancies are following, whether in 5 years' time that might look really different. Are consultancies going to be, or are consultants going to, I don't know, have smaller base salaries but a much larger variable element dependent on revenue generated or whatever else, or or are they tying their own salary to the benefits delivered to clients and the outcomes they've delivered? Who knows? Like that could be super interesting. We haven't seen anyone going quite that far yet, but who knows?
No, and I find it hard to imagine that people are going to consciously shift to lower base, more variable pay. I mean, over the years I've seen firms much more often move the other way, partly because they're particularly their junior team members, like they need the base salary if they want to go and buy houses or even secure rental properties.
We have seen it at the senior end of the market. It is worth saying. Like we have seen, particularly for kind of partner level roles, we've seen people take drops from 250, 300 down to 150, 180, but with a significant variable and an equity stake often as well. their overall package, should they hit their targets, their overall package will likely be higher, but they're sharing in the risk of that.
Yeah.
I've seen a few examples of that now.
Yeah, and I think that's going to be more and more common, actually, particularly as the kind of boutiques continue to grow, continue to outgrow the bigger firms. And one of the universal problems that they have is hiring partner level folks and finding the right compensation packages that enable people that have a risk appetite and make them hungry enough, whilst de-risking the hiring for the firm. I think is an ongoing battle for a lot of these smaller organizations. And that if I flip back into the kind of candidate mindset, if you're reaching that more senior level and you want to keep your options open, one of the biggest levers you can pull is to control your expenses, personal family expenses. I've had conversations with partners on kind of 400k packages before who cannot afford to move to a job that pays less than that. As guaranteed base, and that massively narrows the world of options for just how you live your life. So
it does, yeah. I mean, we speak to a lot of senior candidates who want to move to small startup, scale up, like fast growth type things, but don't have the financial risk element there to be able to cut their base salary by a significant chunk to take that on. They love the idea of it, but they're not in a position where they can put themselves forward.
At the point where you, if you miss your bonus, then your house gets repossessed, or you have to move with your kids.
Take the kids out of school,
the risk factor is significantly higher, should we say?
Yes, yeah, definitely.
So I don't see that shifting too much. I think there's what we'll see, I believe, is the classic kind of the classic dynamics that we've really always had of the firms that do really well in the new world. And broadly speaking, they're going to be exposed to the right end sectors that are growing fast. They're going to be AI enabled and able to create value faster than anybody else. And they're going to be absolutely nailed on what their proposition is. They're going to have their marketing engines running smoothly. They're going to have their sales capabilities in place, and they're going to be growing.
Yeah.
People in those firms will therefore have more opportunity and progress faster, and their compensation will shift, and they'll get into equity and firm performance-based bonuses faster. And the firms that don't do all of that are in the wrong end, people are not going to get paid as much.
I'm intrigued by your thoughts on a conversation I had earlier this week with a managing partner, founder of a consultancy. His view was that the consulting market is going to shift towards smaller teams of more expensive consultants, but with more of a non-chargeable back-end capability. So we were talking about entry-level hiring earlier. His view was that entry-level hires are going to come in and they're going to build a lot of the tools, and they're going to get heavily involved in that, almost in the old school McKinsey model, where you don't speak to a client for the first 2 years. You are just stuck in kind of the data room, and that's your role. So you're not chargeable, but the more senior roles are going to become more expensive, but you only need a smaller team. So rather than having a 6-person team for much longer, you might have, let's say £1,500 a day, you might have a 3-person team at £2,000 a day, but for a shorter period of time. That's when you thought the market was going to shift.
I think what we'll see is it's no longer going to make sense for junior consultants to be just on one project full time, fully allocated for a long time. They're at minimum, they're going to be running their main project and then also acting as quality control, verification and replication for the outputs from another project, and that'll increase their exposures. The whole whether they're chargeable or not is an interesting dynamic, because there's an inherent assumption there that you're charging on a time basis. You're charging by day rate, and it ultimately, as firms move more to fixed pricing, which is a dynamic we've seen, and more success-based pricing, again, a dynamic we've seen, although moving way slower than people think. Like the percentage.
So I've been asking, in these interviews, are people moving to outcome-based pricing? And a lot of them are saying, we'd like to, but the clients don't have the risk appetite for us to share in the upside of what we may deliver. There are a couple examples of firms doing it really well, but there are a lot of firms, I think, who would like to do outcome-based pricing, but aren't quite getting the client engagement for that. but we are seeing
it
more.
tends to be plus or minus 20%, as opposed to like, well, we've created 50x our fees, so we're going to double our triple what you pay us. Like
yes,
that.
yeah.
Those deals are pretty rare.
One of the things that's come through from the interviews is an increase in more, I guess, subscription-based pricing, either as organizations are productizing and creating digital products, or when they're working with a client, they're actually saying, look, we could build something that can do this for you. Like AI will enable us to build it now quite quickly. Like we were talking just before this, like the compliance tool that a client has built, where you could feed in new marketing material, and it will tell you whether it's compliant or not. And their model is, why would we not leave that with the client? Like we want to have some stickability with that client.
Yeah.
But equally, we don't want to take the piss and charge them outrageously for it. So like, let's find a commercial model where we can kind of keep that engagement going for a longer period of time, but obviously not do it and lose on the same time.
And those kind of tools, I think, are really interesting for the junior consultants and the junior consultant compensation model, because they provide a kind of foundational level of revenue with a tool and a set of activities that a junior person can be really valuable in. They can be monitoring a tool like that, seeing the insights, feeding that back either directly to the client or up into a project team who can then raise it with the client and provide that value-added layer that the software firms with their professional services and consulting teams have been trying to do for a long time, and they often find it challenging. And often that's because their consulting and professional services teams are fundamentally software and technical people, and again, it's an area we do a lot of work in, is helping those people become more commercially minded and thinking about that. So that the junior consultant that is embedded alongside or within a tool like that has this kind of just regular feed of insight from across a whole bunch of different clients and can start to offer that up, I think that naturally lends itself to a more fixed base salary type model than a lot of junior consultants have had in the past, where they've had performance-based bonuses and firm-based bonuses, because it's a much more stable situation.
It is, but also I think it helps create the next level of the next kind of layer of specialists starting to come through. One of the big challenges, I guess, with an AI empowered consultancy is how are the juniors coming through the ranks becoming specialists in something if maybe they're not getting quite into the same level of detail as they have done historically. So actually, in this instance, it does help them become specialists in a core area, even if they are working across multiple things kind of concurrently.
Yeah, and creating that like deep level of expertise is one of the best ways of progressing your career, whether in your current firm or moving elsewhere or trying to start your own thing. Like I was advising someone the other day who was, they've accumulated 8,000 or so followers on LinkedIn. They're going out independently for the first time, not quite sure what to talk about because they've got a broad-based knowledge. And I will always bang the drum on, you should pick one very precise small person you want to help and a problem you want to solve, and just talk about that. So that deep specialist expertise is
inside more deep. Yeah,
100%. All right, we're coming to the end of our time. It's always fascinating to talk through these things, and it goes very quickly. I'm going to just pull up one page. For those of you who are regulars at our webinars, you probably recognize this, but I will encourage you anyway, for those that aren't, if you want to join future webinars, if you want to get our articles or follow us on socials, then the QR code in there in the middle will allow you to opt into whatever is valuable to you, whether that's the weekly articles that we publish through our Substack newsletter, our LinkedIn newsletter. Follow me or Honeycomb more broadly, or any of our team on LinkedIn, or get invites to future webinars. So scan that QR code. If you want to talk to me about anything that's come up today, or anything more broadly about developing exceptional consulting teams, then feel free to book some time in my diary. And Richard, what's the best way for people to get in touch with you and learn more about Tarka?
It would probably be emailing me. It's richard@tarkatalent.co.uk. I would say connect with me on LinkedIn, but I hover around 30,000 connections. I kind of periodically get that down to about 29, and then very quickly it gets back to 30. So there's no guarantee that I'll be able to accept connection requests. But if you email me, I'll come back quickly.
Amazing.
And the salary report is obviously available on our website as well.
Yes. And actually, if I just flip back a page. So a reminder for those of you who weren't there at the start, what we've been talking about is the 2026 salary and benefits report that Richard and the team at Tarka Talent have produced. And you can grab a copy of that through that QR code there, or at tarkatalent.co.uk/consulting salary guides. And there's a link in the comments here as well. Before we wrap up, Richard, I just wanted to give you space for any final thoughts, particularly for the boutique consulting firm leaders who are watching today. What they should really be thinking about, or the kind of specific actions that they should be taking off the back of this.
I think the one core takeaway that I would encourage everyone to take from that salary report, particularly a boutique consulting leader, is, I said it earlier, if you can create a positive working culture where your staff are doing interesting work, they feel that they can progress, and they feel that they're earning well, that is the best way of attracting and retaining talent. And if you cannot point to examples of that internally, then that's probably where I would start in trying to make yourself a more attractive employer.
Yeah, you've got to make the work appealing at the core of it. Yeah, absolutely. And then also, one of the things that stuck with me is like just benchmark your salaries. Like if you're trying to hire people at a certain level, and you don't know that you are under offering, then you're not going to win people. If you're over offering, then you're getting mistakes on the other side, and either way you want to fix that. So the simplest way to do that is just to read the report here. So thank you very much, Richard. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me on
these conversations, and thank you to everybody that's joined us today. Any questions, get in touch, and if not, I hope you enjoy the rest of your weeks. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, Tarek.